There are 42 unique buffs in Tears of the Kingdom, and 16 of which are brand new to this game. I figured I'd break down the stats behind all of them, along with providing any unique info that may be of use. We'll be splitting this up into 3 categories: movement buffs, combat buffs, and elemental buffs, so let's start with the first. A signature to Tears, Skydive Mobility Up buffs your horizontal freefall speed by a large margin. A level 1 buff increases it by 50%, a level 2 by 100%, and a level 3 buff by 150%, so you'll be zooming noticeably further. This makes horizontal travel while skydiving 2 times faster than paragliding with this full buff, as without it you're about a quarter slower than paragliding speed. And the impact-proof set bonus you receive at level 2 nulls any fall damage, including the damage you get from ragdolling down cliffs. The other speed buffs are a bit more subtle, with the swim speed one speeding you up by 30% with a level 1, 60% with a level 2, and 100% with a level 3. This applies to all water except swimming up waterfalls, where the speed remains constant regardless of buff. Although this effect is normally obtained via armor or food, Link can alternatively get a hidden level 1 swim buff by swimming naked, or rather in their boxer shorts. In fact, this is the only armorless stat buff that Link can receive. Sadly though, this effect does not stack with the regular swim speed buff, so having a level 1 buff while armorless will still just equate to a level 1 buff. This swimming experience can still be enhanced with the Swim Dash Stamina Up set bonus on the Zora armor, which reduces the stamina use of swim dashing by 75%, so it's most effectively used when going against the current or upstream. Next is the climb speed buffs, which speeds up climbing by 20% with a level 1 buff, 30% with a level 2, and 40% with a level 3. These do make your climb faster, but it's important to know that your stamina also drains faster at a matched rate. Therefore, you won't be able to get any extra distance out of your climbs, you'll just be speedier at them. This differs from all other movement buffs, where other types of enhanced speed do not drain stamina faster. Luckily, there still is climb hopping, which costs 50% less stamina with the Climb Jump Stamina Up set bonus on the climbing gear, but this again is meant for speed and not distance. The Ravio's Hood contains a uniquely separate buff to your climbing speed that boosts horizontal climbing movement by 70% when moving directly sideways. And even if you're not going fully horizontal, you'll still get a fraction of this buff depending on how sideways you're going. So an even diagonal will still speed you up by 35%, as it's half horizontal, half vertical. The best part of this buff though is that it's fully stackable with the climb speed buff too. So a level 3 speed buff plus the Ravio Hood will give you a complete 138% speed buff while traveling horizontal. Since these are technically 2 different types of buffs, they are allowed to stack multiplicatively like this for even more effect, a common theme you'll see across many pairs of like buffs. But this all leads us to the big speed up buff, called Speed Up, that actually has the power of 3 separate buffs in one: swim speed, climb speed, and running speed. The running speed portion is more subtle, increasing by 10% with a level 1, 20% with a level 2, and 30% with a level 3. And this works regardless if you're jogging or sprinting with stamina. But on top of this, you're also getting the benefits of a swim and climb buff with it, so it's really a 3-in-1 bundle of mobility. This buff is only obtainable via meals, but the effects can stack interchangeably with swim and climb, so if you only have 2 levels of a climbing buff, you can apply a level 1 speed effect to get it to a level 3 climb buff, along with the 1 level boost to running and swimming too. Just remember that you can't surpass a level 3 buff by using this, so any overflow levels are just a waste. The only other buff that deals with speed is the Night Speed set bonus, obtainable in many different armors, which is active between the hours of 9 PM and 4 AM in-game. This buff acts just like a level 2 speed buff, but only for the running portion, as it does not boost swim or climbing. A level 1 speed buff can still be stacked on top of this though to make it a level 3 for a bit of extra speed. How nice. In terms of traversal based buffs, there's quite a few that provide interesting perks to enhance travel. The glow buff adds a luminescent effect that increases with each level, to compensate for the game being half pitch black. There's not really a noticeable stat here to list, but for the glow armor set bonus Shining Steps, every 5 seconds it places a little light chrome on the ground assuming you're walking on foot. And each of these lights have a mere lifespan of 30 seconds, so it's just a vague way of tracking your last half minute. A new buff that is helpful is Slip Resistance, which decreases your slipping rate by 3 times with a level 1, 4 times with a level 2, and 5 times with a level 3. The base slip timer when climbing in the rain is a bit random, as you'll usually slip after 2 to 3 seconds into your climb, but a level 1 buff will push back this window by triple, meaning you can comfortably go about 6 seconds without slipping, and possibly a few more. Since the sloping is based on time and not the amount of grabs like people think, you can actually use a speed buff to get more distance out of your climb, making it less frustrating and more efficient. The best case scenario though is with a level 3 slip resistance buff, which increases the slip window to roughly every 10 to 15 seconds, making climbing in the rain almost not a problem. The only big hindrance is climb hopping, which still makes you slip regardless, but this can be fully negated with the slip-proof set bonus, on top of any other slipping in general. Two other buffs also remove movement-based hindrances, snow speed up and sand speed up. These two terrain types naturally hinder your walking speed by 20%, but with the corresponding buffs, this slowness is nullified. Knowing this, one may think that having a level 2 speed buff of 20% can nullify the bad effects of these surfaces, but since the game calculates the speed debuff before the other buffs, you'll still be a little slower than just nullifying the debuff completely with the right boots. So if you have to choose between night speed up and the boots, always pick the boots. But no surface hinders more in the game though than gloom, which is what the gloom resistance buff is meant for. Instead of sapping at your health bar, it will sap at these blue warding hearts first, with each level of the buff granting 1 warding heart. These hearts regenerate at a rate of 1 every 5 seconds, assuming you're not currently in gloom. The set bonus on this, Gloom Attack Resist, contrary to name, does not increase your resistance to gloom attacks, as it just adds a 4th warding heart. These buffs are only helpful in preventing damage from loose gloom, not gloom-based enemies. The energy up buff on the Zonai set decreases the cost of all battery usage by 20% with a level 1, 35% with a level 2, and 50% with a level 3, which is key for working with battery pricey builds. And its set bonus, Energy Recharge Up, increases the recharge rates of your batteries by 50%, which happens when they currently aren't in use. A more hidden utility buff can be found within the Island Lobster shirt, as to mimic the game that it comes from, allows you to wind gust raft pieces with higher power. This makes rafts accelerate faster, therefore ignoring more wind resistance and increasing speed. Although the buff's not listed, the game's internal name for this bonus is fittingly called Wake Wind. The final buff to discuss before moving on to the combat ones is the stealth buff, as it's commonly misunderstood on how it works. The stealth buff is only meant to reduce the player's sound output, as it has no impact on an enemy being able to see you visually. A level 1 buff makes you 20% quieter, a level 2 is 40%, and a level 3 buff makes you 70% quieter. But this info in itself isn't too helpful without knowing the stats behind player noise and enemy hearing, which is mostly unknown. But against most enemies, a level 1 stealth buff makes it so you can crouch at full speed undetected, level 2 makes it so you can remain at a jog undetected until you get within a few meters, and a level 3 buff makes it so you can jog and even jump around an enemy fully undetected. That is assuming you aren't pressing sprints and you don't get within the enemy's sightlines, as they all have unique vision cones that are multi-tiered. The stealth system is very intricate here, but if you want to learn more about it, we made a full stats video on this subject you can check out above and below. It's technically a Breath of the Wild video, but the mechanics carried over to tiers nearly 100%. The only other stealth-like buffs in this game are the disguise ones, which make the respective monsters friendly assuming you aren't engaged in combat near them. With the bone disguise you can fool all normal skeletons, but this also works on the Stalnox, although these ones only get fooled for the first few seconds before seeing past your disguise. The Yiga set has tons of different interactions, but it's mainly to prevent Yigas from being hostile. And the other individual disguise masks are self-explanatory, with a few exceptions. 1. The Bokoblin mask works for both regular and boss Bokoblins. 2. The Lynel mask only works temporarily against Lynels before they engage. And 3. The Majora's mask basically adds all the other mask disguises into one. This also includes the 3 variants of stall enemies, but it does not have any effect against the Stalnox. This mask also doesn't work against constructs, as they are technically not monsters, same with Yiga. Just keep in mind that with any disguise, nearby monsters that you aren't fooling can still alert the others of your presence, which includes baby enemies like Keiths that you can't disguise yourself against. But alright, kicking off the combat related buffs, the attack up buff increases most of Link's damage by 20% with a level 1, 30% with a level 2, and 50% with a level 3. These buffs work with most player attacks like melee, ranged, and parrying with a damaging attachment, but they do not buff the power of elemental damage, explosions, Zonai tech, environmental kills, sages, or parrying projectiles. An attack boost can also be acquired with the set bonus on any of the green tunics, although it's only a level 1 version of the buff, but it is stackable with the regular buff to a level 3 effect. The late game Master Sword Beam Up buff can boost these beams damage by 50%, which is stackable with the base attack buff, turning a normal 10 damage beam into a 22 damage one. By far the most unique of the attack buffs is the Bone Attack Up Step bonus, which gives an 80% attack boost to any bone weapon you're using. To make this more clear, there are 12 different objects in the world that count as bone for the buff, between the 3 skeletal arms, 2 shields, 3 bows, 3 different materials, and 1 loose part. Anything that's not listed does not count. For the melee weapons and shields, as long as either the base part or the fuse part is one of these bone objects, the whole attack will be enhanced by the 80% buff. Fusing 2 bone things together won't stack this buff further though. But on the subject of bows, these attacks can only be enhanced if the base bow is bone, as using a bone part as an arrow fusion by itself will not get buffed by the buff. So sorry to those who paired 5-shot Gibdo bones with the skeleton set thinking it would work. The best news about this buff though is that it can be stacked multiplicatively with the base attack buff, and assuming it's a level 3, this combo will grant you 170% more damage, so make sure your attack has the proper backbone. The last 3 attack buffs, Cold, Hot, and Stormy Weather Up, are not quite what you'd expect. They don't actually increase the damage of your attacks under these conditions, as they only add an Elemental Blast to your combo finishers and charge attacks. The Ice and Fire Blasts deal a flat 15 damage, while the Shock ones deal 25, besides the few enemies that have resistances. The only thing that the level of the buff affects is the size of these Elemental Blasts, as a level 1 combo finisher has a 2 radius blast, level 2's is 3 meters, and level 3 is 4 meters. These are pretty small, but the blasts you get from charge attacks are a lot bigger, with a level 1's blast radius being 6 meters, level 2 is 8, and level 3's are 10 meters. So it's at least a pretty fun way of distributing elemental effect. And to make it better, these armor set bonuses makes getting these charge attacks much easier, as they increase the speed of charging an attack by 2 times for one-handeds and spears, and for the two-handed weapons, they reduce the stamina cost of a spin to win by half. A similar buff to this set bonus is the charge attack stamina reduction, which works the same as the two-handed charge with the other buff, but the stamina reduction also applies to one-handeds and spears too, instead of their quick charge. Moving forward, all the buffs we have to discuss here have to deal with protection, either against monsters or the elements, which will start with the main combat ones. The normal defense buff works by giving the player hidden armor points that can add with the current armor points you see in the menu. With the buff, a level 1 gives you plus 4 points, level 2 gives plus 12, and a level 3 gives plus 24 armor points. Armor in this game works by subtracting damage points away from an enemy's attack. So if an enemy deals 24 damage to the player regularly, or 6 hearts, having 10 armor points will nullify that attack to just 14 damage, or 3.5 hearts. Just remember that 1 point of damage is equal to 1/4 heart, so 4 points of damage is 1 full heart. This damage per hit can typically be nullified all the way down to 1 point if it's a physical attack, although some exceptions apply. With this said, Tears of the Kingdom also has another layer of armor protection with the rupee padding buff, which uses your rupees to block up to a certain amount of damage. Every 1 point of damage blocked costs 10 rupees, which is calculated after your armor points are. So the full set, which has 9 armor points, when going up against an enemy that deals 24 damage, will have 9 of those points blocked by armor, and the remaining 15 blocked by rupees, costing the player 150 rupees. It's still fairly costly considering the set can't be upgraded, so for max padding, a defensive potion is still a good pairing. But even with a full bank account, this set won't save you from everything, as having the level 1 buff will only tank up to 12 damage or 3 hearts, level 2 is 24 damage, and level 3 is 36 damage or 9 hearts. Any excess just gets taken out of your hearts. So even when paired with a level 3 defense buff, it's only a tad more defensy than a typical level 4 armor set, but a lot more costly in the long run. The last 6 buffs to discuss cover the 3 main elements in the game, and are mostly self-explanatory. Hot and cold resistance just protects you from the extreme temperature areas, with some requiring level 1 and some requiring level 2. Their corresponding set bonuses, Fireproof and Unfreezable, do not protect you against these weather conditions, but they do make you immune to the respective elemental attacks. With the Shock element though, fortunately you don't need a special set bonus to block it out, as a level 3 shock resistance buff already blocks out 100% of all shock damage, including its effect to the player, while a level 2 buff can still block out 60% of its damage, and a level 1 blocks 30%. Note that the shock resistance set bonus found on the Gerudo armor works just like a level 2 buff, and is stackable up to level 3. These buffs are also effective against lightning, with the level 3 variant even removing its disarming effect. But these buffs do not block the strike's 11 damage explosion. But of course, this can be fully negated with the lightning-proof effect. And there you have it! I hope this knowledge on all 42 stat buffs will be helpful in your adventures, and it was fun looking into everything. I pulled some of the stat values for the new tiers buffs from Echocolat spreadsheet, which will be in the description, and it's a great resource to use when you need to be reminded of something in a pinch. But thank you all so much for watching this episode of Stats of the Kingdom. The playlist for this series can be found above and below, which we're going to add a lot more videos to it in the years to come. I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye!